Thanks, Colleen. My name is Liz Rotundo, and I am on the board for the Albany Vegan Network. And I would love to welcome you all here today. This is our 7th annual VegFest, and we are so psyched to have you all here. This is a great crowd in here. It's my great privilege to introduce to you Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, who I'm not actually even reading her bio today. I'm just going to kind of speak from my heart. I was a vegetarian for 22 years, and I thought that I was doing enough for the animals. And I really just was kind of blind to the truth, or didn't want to see it or hear it at the time. And it was just about a year ago, just a little over a year ago, that my eyes were completely open to the truth when I discovered Colleen's work. Through her books and her podcasts, her videos, I participated in her online interactive program called the 30-Day Vegan Challenge. And through all of those media, my eyes, as I said, were completely opened to the truth. And because of that, I am now proudly stand here before you as an ethical vegan for the animals. And so Colleen continues to inspire me every single day when I walk or ride my bike or on the treadmill. I listen to her podcasts. I have learned so very much from her podcasts. I listen to her podcasts and they make me laugh. They make me angry, not at her, but just in general about what the subject matter is. Quite often I'll be walking along and I stop dead in my tracks because I'm like, really? You know, this happens or people say this. I also cry, and I think these are all a mix of emotions that we all go through on this path. And so it is my great privilege to introduce Colleen, who I am so touched by her work every single day, and I can honestly stand here and say that it is because of Colleen she changed my life. So she will also be, after she speaks today, she will be signing. She has 2 books here with her today. She has the Vegan Table and The Joy of Vegan Baking, 2 amazing cookbooks that you should all purchase. She also has other books called Calling Me Vegan and The Vegan's Daily Companion, which is a guidebook that you can read throughout the year. And her newest book is called On Being Vegan, and that I believe is part of a series. So please join me in welcoming Colleen Patrick-Goudreau.
Can you hear me then? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Really? Yeah. Now? Yeah. So if I talk like this the whole time, we're good? If I talk like this? All right, if I just talk, we're good, right? Can you hear me in the back? All right. I got to clip this on my boot. Excuse me. Nice boots.
Yeah, nice boots.
They're vegan. They're vegan boots. Thank you. I am like so not the fashion person. These are Steve Madden. Apparently that means something fancy. Thank you so much, Liz. It is just such. I have to say that I am so touched literally by the people who make their changes and transformation through my work, and I really see my work as being a conduit. And I'm really grateful to be that conduit for this information because you changed your life. You did it, you know. I don't take any credit from people who make this change, just like I don't take the blame for those who don't. Literally, I mean, the people in my life who've not made the change, my parents, for instance. But that's not my fault. Just like I don't take the credit for someone who does make the change. I'm just grateful to be able to contribute. So thank you so much and for having me here. So my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, and the mission in my work is to speak over loud trucks. Wow, that's loud. Is to empower people to make informed food choices, to debunk myths about veganism, to be a voice for animals, like that little critter there who I'll talk about. Not little, he's 1,500 pounds. And to give people the tools and resources they need to live according to their own values of compassion and wellness. And can you guys hear me in the back? You're good? Great. I really do think that people already know why vegan. I'm really encouraged by, again, the number of people that I hear from who make this change. I see it all the time. So I really do believe that people already know why vegan. I think where people really struggle is with the how vegan. And that's really where I see my work, is guiding people to make this transition and to do it joyfully and to do it healthfully and to do it deliciously. And that's really the mission in my work. I think people really struggle with the how because we live in a culture that doesn't make it easy for us to make the most healthful choices, right? We live in a culture that doesn't make it easy for us to make the most compassionate choices. We live in a world that in many ways embraces animal exploitation and abuse and looks upon those who oppose these things with derision, sometimes definitely suspicion a little bit, right? I think most of us can identify with the process of going from an innately compassionate child to a desensitized adult. It breaks my heart because we really do encourage children in compassion. And then we're kind of suspicious of compassionate adults. We kind of say that like, oh, she was a really sweet kid, like that's okay. But when we're compassionate adults, it's kind of extreme. She takes it a little far. She loves pigs. It's so fine, whatever. Right? I mean, so we have this kind of like suspicion, like there's something wrong with too much compassion. Tone down the compassion. Like that's the problem we have is way too much compassion. It's not the problem we have, right? So most of us can identify with this process. My story is not unique. I grew up in a typical American family in New Jersey. Woo, New Jersey represent. Not there anymore though, I'm in California now. So, because what? It's New Jersey. I'm just kidding, I love New Jersey. So, grew up in New Jersey, and I thought you were like booing, like, boo! Love New Jersey, now I'm California. But I grew up eating everything that had once walked or swum or flew. I grew up in a standard American family. I was the kid who, I'm reluctant to say I loved animals because I don't think you have to love animals in order to not want to hurt them. But I was someone you would have labeled an animal lover because I loved being in their presence, I loved being near them, I loved interacting with them. I certainly intervened if they were suffering in any way. Just all the typical things you do if there was a stray animal or a bird who had fallen from a tree. Loved my job, right? My parents supported this, the adults around me supported this. Like every other child, I had images of animals all over my clothing, images of animals all over my wallpaper, all over my bedclothes. I had stuffed animals in my bed. I still have some stuffed animals in my bed. Fair, I know, I love my bear. We played games, we sang songs about animals. Most strikingly, we were read books that taught us not only to be respectful kind of social creatures, but also books that used animals to teach us how to read and count and spell. Our most fundamental skills were taught to us by animals. So in every way, in every area of my life, I was taught that animals were an integral part of my development and my identity. And what I didn't know was that at the same time all of that was happening, I was being fed animals. The very same animals whose images were all over my clothing and bedclothes, etc., right? So what had happened was, and my parents, Jenny had just said this in her talk, they weren't doing it to hurt me. That's what they were raised with. They didn't know. But what they didn't know what was happening was a split was taking place. And I began to compartmentalize the animals into those we love, and to those we eat, and to those we have in our homes, and those we use over here. And my compassion began to be compartmentalized as well. And it began to become dull and just kind of go to sleep a bit, right? I know, I can't do anything about that. That wasn't me. So it was put to sleep, but not entirely, but it was definitely not as fierce as it had once been, right? So I developed the taste for the fat and flesh of animals and went about eating everything and everything, right? Now, I'd like to say that I was fine, I had no compunction, I ate everything, it didn't bother me, but that's not true because I made the same excuses and justifications that so many of us make in order to feel better about what we're doing, because none of us want to consider ourselves violent, cruel people contributing to this, and because we're not, we don't know what we're contributing to. I didn't know. When I was 19 or 20, I read Diet for New America. A lot of you have heard of that book, of course, it's a classic now. John Robbins, who was the heir to the Baskin-Robbins fortune, had rejected the fortune to find out what the effects of the standard American diet are on our health, on the animals, and on the environment. And it was that book that I had read, Diet for New America, that just opened my eyes. I had no idea. And I had seen photos of these animals, and I had no idea that's what I was contributing to. And I made the connection for the first time and stopped eating land animals right away. Interestingly, the response my parents had to my not eating land animals was not the same response they had had when I was a kind, compassionate child helping some dogs and cats. Not the same response at all, interestingly. And yet, it was the very same compassion. It was the very same compassion that had compelled me to help a dog or a cat or a bird when I was a child that compelled me to not want to contribute to violence over here. The very same compassion. The only thing that was different was the recipient of that compassion, right? So I persevered, I read more, I learned more, I eventually stopped eating everything that came off of or out of an animal. I became vegan. I love that word, it makes me happy. It makes me laugh. And with joy. And so I became vegan, and I'd like to say that I returned to that unconditional compassion of my childhood, but I don't think that's entirely what happens. I think when I was a child, I acted compassionately without thought, as if I didn't know any better to just help someone who needed my help. It just came naturally, and now as an awakened adult, I eat compassionately and live compassionately with thought. And I really regret that we value the innocent compassion of a child over the informed compassion of an adult, right? And that's what happens. And so these are the messages that we get that keep reinforcing us consuming animals. And so that's against us when we want to really manifest that compassion. So the information we get, the advertising, the marketing, our parents, our upbringing, all of these things are contributing. And then we have all of these myths around nutrition and the myths around food and the social aspects and animals and anthropology and biology and all of these things that contribute to us continuing to eat animals, making excuses to do so. Because these myths, I think, turn into the excuses that we use, right? And so I'm going to talk about some of these myths. Nutrition is probably, the most prevalent for most people, the myths around nutrition. Nobody cares what you eat like when you're consuming animals. No one cares about protein when you're eating animals, but as soon as you tell them that you're not eating animals, everybody cares about your protein consumption. So the problem is that we're all taught that the nutrients we need are animal-based, right? I mean, that's kind of the gist of what we're taught as we go through school and our parents upbringing, all of it, all of the information out there reinforces that the nutrients we need are animal-based, right? And I can test this right here with you smart people. If I were to ask you where we're taught we're supposed to get our calcium, you would say, well, what kind of milk? Is that human milk? Human milk, we're supposed to get our protein calcium from human. We don't say that, no we don't. From cow's milk, right? Specifically animal milk. If I were to ask where we're supposed to get our omega-3 fatty acids, you would say fish. And if I were to say where we're supposed to get our protein, you would say and you heard the same things I heard when I was growing up. That's amazing. We all have that same information, right? So meat, dairy, eggs, everything we hear about protein, right? We're so obsessed with protein. We're so obsessed with protein. I hear so many people who say, I tried being vegetarian, but my body just needed protein, and so I needed protein. And I say, wow, what is, your body, my body just said it, I needed protein. And I said, what did your body say that you heard, I need protein? What did that feel like? We go, I don't know, I was just tired, and I needed protein. Okay, that's not protein deficiency. And it's usually after a day. I did it for a day, and I just really needed protein. And so, what did that feel like to need protein? What did that feel like? And they say, I don't know. My doctor said I was anemic, and it's okay. That's iron. That's not protein. What did it feel like? No one could tell you what it feels like to need protein. And of course, I have to say, I'm sorry. You mean animal protein, of course, because we're not taught that there are proteins in plants, right? So everyone could tell you, but no one could tell you how it feels like. Yet everybody's so obsessed with protein. Do me a favor. Raise your hand if you've heard of, say, heart disease. Raise your hand if you've heard of diabetes. Good. Anybody know anybody on cholesterol lowering medication, blood pressure lowering medication? Awesome. Raise your hand if you know someone with kwashiorkor. Awesome. Kwashiorkor. Anybody? Raise your hand high. That is amazing. You'd think you would know someone with kwashiorkor because that's the scientific term for protein deficiency. And we're so obsessed with protein, and everybody knows someone who needs protein so badly, so you'd think we'd know someone with kwashiorkor. You don't have a kwashiorkor ward in the local hospital. Any kwashiorkor specialists in the house? Right? We don't have kwashiorkor here in industrialized nations because we don't have diseases of deficiency, right? We took care of scurvy. We know that vitamin C takes care of scurvy. Anybody have rickets in that? We took care of vitamin D deficiency for the most part. Now, these nutrients are important, of course they are, but the point is that we're so obsessed with these single nutrients, and we don't have diseases of deficiency. Everything that you said you knew about, those are diseases of excess. Those are conditions of excess. Those are not diseases and conditions of deficiency. And yet everyone's so obsessed with this, right? So the problem is that people aren't getting the answers they need because they're asking the wrong questions. The question is not, where do vegans get their protein? The question is, why are we going through the animals to get to the nutrients that the animals get because they eat plants? We don't eat the carnivores. We eat the herbivores. They're getting the nutrients from the plants. Why are we going through the animal to get to the nutrients that the animal's getting, right? It makes absolutely no sense. We need to skip the middle animal and go directly to the source. And when we do so, we're skipping the saturated fat, we're skipping the dietary cholesterol, we're skipping the animal protein, we're skipping the lactose, right? None of which is necessary, most of which is harmful. And when we go right to the plants, we get the vitamins and minerals we need, we get the folate, not in animal products, we get the fiber, doesn't exist in animal products, we get the antioxidants and phytochemicals, doesn't exist in animal products. If you have any antioxidants in flesh or eggs or any animal product, it's because they ate plants, right? So it doesn't make sense ecologically, ethically, nutritionally to go through the animals, right? I mean, if you just look at calcium, you said calcium, we're supposed to get calcium from cow's milk. So what's calcium, first of all? What is it? Let's start there. Mineral, good, smart crowd. You should see Tucson. Oh my God. No. Love Tucson. Woohoo! I hope no one's here from Tucson. Love Tucson. So calcium's a mineral. Where are minerals found? In the ground, in the earth, in the soil. And so why do cows have calcium in their milk? Because they're eating grass. Theoretically, 3 out of 4 cows today in dairy production are not eating grass. They're not grazing these animals. They're kept on dry lots. And so that the dairy industry can live up to the marketing claims that this is a high calcium food, what do to the cow's feed? They supplement it. You could supplement your feed. That would make a lot more sense. You could just supplement your diet with calcium. You don't even have to. You can go through the plants and get to the calcium because it's in the plants, right? But the idea that we're literally raising these animals, giving them calcium supplements so that their milk is higher in calcium instead of going, makes no sense just from a resource perspective. Because what we have to do in reality is start with a cow who is impregnated, and we do that dirty deed, right? And I remember, and I will tell you this, I remember the day I learned that cows have to be pregnant in order to lactate. And I know y'all sitting there going, wow, she was really sick. That was maybe because she's from New Jersey. And I would say, no, none of us are encouraged to know that. We don't even say that in our language. We say cows give milk, right? As if they come into this world ready to bestow upon humans their nutritional goals. This is my milk, it's for you, here you go, I am here, and here's your milk, right? We don't say we take their milk. We don't say they lactate. We say they give milk. So we're not encouraged to think that, but in reality, they have to be pregnant, and they're pregnant for 9 months, almost as long as a human being. And for all our arrogance, we know in our hearts that humans do not corner the market on maternal affection. And so we suspect that when an animal has a baby, all they want is that baby. All she wants to do is nurture her baby. That's all she wants to do. Feed him, nurture him, nourish him. But she's not allowed to because we take her baby, whose milk her body is making, for whom her body is making this milk, and we take him away. If he is male and 50% are, he's killed right away, or he's allowed to live 4 to 6 months, and then he's killed. And if she's a female, she goes into the same servitude as her mother, right? And of course, the other thing that I remember learning was that there is no such thing as a retirement spa for cows. When I was vegetarian before I was vegan, I was like so many other people who just thought, well, if there's no direct killing in actually drinking the milk or the cheese or what have you, then there's no harm, because we have this romantic notion that there's some retirement spa for cows, and of course that is not the case, because she's used only for how much milk her body can produce, and when she's no longer profitable, she is sent to slaughter, right? And that's at 4 or 5 years as opposed to the 20, 25 years they could live. And I remember when I learned that there was no such thing as a slaughter-free animal agriculture system, period. No one is going to keep animals and keep them and protect them and feed them and medicate them and take care of them and not get a profit. It's a profit-driven industry. That's what it's there for. So I remember when I learned that, and I was just so struck by the fact that these babies are just incidental, that they exist only because she had to be pregnant. That's the only reason they exist. And of course, the males, they wanted to make sure they were profitable, so that's how the veal industry is thriving. That's basically the relationship, because they wanted to make the males profitable. Baby right here was a baby from a dairy cow, and she was having trouble giving birth, and so the dairy farmer brought her into the vet, and of course, when he came out male, he said, I don't need him, just kill him. I mean, that's just standard, that's just the way it is. And luckily, someone stepped up and was a compassionate person and said no. And Linus came to a farm animal sanctuary, and I was there when he came, and he was 3 days old. And I bottle fed him, and I'm going to cry because I love him so much, because he is just a cuddle bug. And he would try to sit on my lap when he was 60 pounds. I have pictures of him like trying to sit on my lap. And now he's like 1,500 pounds and 8 years old, and he still tries to sit on my lap. And he's amazing. And so he's really one of the most special beings. I just could sit in his presence forever. And so that's the reality of it. And if you can imagine if these babies were allowed to consume their mother's milk, what would happen as time went on and they start to grow bigger? What happens? They become weaned, they move on to solid food, and they don't drink their mother's milk anymore. Now, we could identify with this somewhat because we drink of our mother's milk, and then we are weaned, and then we are moving on to solid foods, right? Kind of at the same time, and then we're told, hang on, that's great, no, you need to consume the milk of another animal, even though the offspring of that very animal has stopped drinking his mother's milk into adulthood. We don't even drink our own milk into adulthood, right? Can I suggest that we start an industry of human breast milk, ice cream, cheese, liquid milk? Most people would be like, that's disgusting. I mean, there are jokes about that. People are like drinking their wife's milk or something by mistake. They're like, oh my God. It's our own species. And we're like, that's disgusting. And yet we have been, obviously indoctrinated so there's no problem with consuming cow's milk, or goat's milk, or sheep's milk, or even buffalo milk, or camel's milk all around the world. And so I would ask, why? Why not human milk, first of all, because it doesn't make sense. We know that it doesn't make sense to consume our own human milk into adulthood. And our bodies even support that, right? So our bodies have an enzyme called lactase. And the lactase enzyme enables us to digest the sugar in milk, which you've all heard of, called lactose, right? And so when we are of an age where we're no longer consuming our mother's milk, any mammalian milk has lactose, our bodies stop making lactase. So we literally don't have the enzyme to digest that sugar. And so what happens? We keep pushing things, we keep consuming mammalian milk, people go to their doctors, they say, I don't feel so good, I'm kind of crampy, I'm kind of bloated, and they say, oh yeah, you've got that problem, you've got a condition, you have lactose intolerance, as if there's something wrong with you. Lactose intolerance is not a disorder. Lactose intolerance is normal. We're not supposed to be consuming any mammalian milk into adulthood, right? So this idea that people are made to feel bad about something that's completely normal breaks my heart. And so why cow's milk? Why not human milk? Why not hyena's milk? If we want the highest calcium milk, we should be drinking hyena's milk. I'm starting an industry now. Why? What do these animals have in common? What do the cattle have in common? And the sheep and the goats and the buffalo and the camels, all the animals from whose bodies we take their milk. What do these have in common? They're herd animals. They're easy to control, easier to control than a hyena, say. Easy to control, easy to keep together, right? And that's the point. If you tried to take the milk of a hyena, they would kill you. And that's not a great business plan. So it doesn't work. Well, we probably tried, I'm sure of it. My point is, that's how arbitrary this is. It's not the nature of the milk that makes it conducive for us to consume it, it's the nature of the animals, right? So it makes absolutely no sense. Skip the middle cow, go directly to the plants. And you can do this with every nutrient. You can do this with the omega-3 fatty acids. You could do this with every nutrient. The nutrients we need are plant-based. The only nutrient we need that's not plant-based is also not animal-based. It is vitamin B12. It's bacteria-based. It grows literally on bacteria. So again, it's not animal-based. The nutrients we need are plant-based. Does that make sense? Because I don't even want you to listen to me. I just want this to make sense. You do not have to have a degree in nutrition to understand that it doesn't make sense for us to go through the animals to get the nutrients we need, okay? So So that's one category, is all the stuff around nutrition, our obsession with single nutrients. The other category we have some myths and excuses around is food. One of the things that I said before, I love the word vegan, it cracks me up because I really try to take vegan food out of the box called vegan, right? Because we have this notion that we've got like regular food and normal food over here, and we call it that. And then we've got vegan food over here. Vegan food, like it's its own food group, like it's its own separate food group. And yet it's just food we already know and food we already eat and love. It's fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and herbs and spices. Is that familiar to all of you? That's what vegan food is. It's just food. And so we don't say, could I have a vegan banana, please? Could I have a vegan apple? It's just an apple, right? But we say vegan, 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 vegan. I saw someone post this recently. I think it was, oh my gosh, who was it? I think it was someone from Mercy for Animals posted. It was so cute because he said, we need to stop smurfifying like vegan food. Because you know the Smurfs, everybody remember the Smurfs? Because they said Smurfy this and Smurfy that, like Smurf was everything, right? That was their adjective for everything. Smurfy Smurf. You look Smurfy Smurf today, and I'm so Smurfy Smurf. Like everything was Smurf. And we do that with vegan, 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 vegan. I have friends who say vegan. I went to a vegan restaurant and ate vegan food. I know you're vegan, so I know you ate vegan food. You don't say vegan before everything. So, and I think when people hear vegan food, vegan food, vegan food, it sounds like it's this like category of special food that's exclusive only for the vegans, right? Where's the vegan food for the vegans? And it's food. So it's just food. It's just food. And so a lot of the other myths around the food category, I think, have a lot to do with self-perception, not just food, right? Because we tend to have kind of our perception of ourselves, and then we have like reality, because they don't always meet. And one of the things that happens when you tell someone you're vegan, one of my favorite phrases in the world is, I am vegan, because it's so powerful. And when you say I'm vegan, a lot of people say, yeah, I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't think I eat any at all, they say. I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't eat a lot of eggs. There's not one person I've ever met who has not said that. There's nobody who goes, I eat so much. I eat buckets full, and I eat the most violently procured meat. They go, I ate humane, I prayed over them, and I kissed them, and I loved them, and I drank their blood. I mean, right, so nobody perceives themselves as doing anything that creates harm. We don't want to see that in ourselves, but people also really perceive themselves as not consuming a lot of meat, dairy, and eggs. And the truth is, you don't know how much you eat until you stop. Everything we do, everything we eat, the foods we eat, the way we plate our food, the restaurants we go to, everything we do is based on habit, right? Everything we do is based on habit. Now that's the bad news, because we're fierce creatures of habit. But it's the good news, because habits are meant to be broken. And so that's literally like what my program, the 30-Day Vegan Challenge is literally saying, just do this long enough to change the direction in which you're looking. Because the way we're raised, I mean, these are powerful things, right? I mean, this becomes part of who we are. The problem is that we're looking in this direction our whole lives and choosing the same foods and going to the same restaurants and eating the same menu items in those restaurants over and over and over again. And then someone goes, yeah, vegan food doesn't seem like a lot of variety. Hello, we're all like eating the same things over and over and over. And you don't know how much variety there is until you stop. And instead of going, I'm going to have my burger today, just without thought, you go, I'm going to stop for 30 days and I'm going to have my burger. Wait, no, I'm not eating my burger. So what does that mean? What does that look like? What's over here? Oh my God, there's things over here that I've never seen before. There's cuisines and foods, right? Ingredients I've never cooked with, things I've never eaten before. They were there the whole time you were looking over here, but we just weren't looking in that direction. And so that's what this whole process is going from looking in this direction to this direction. And where I think people get stuck is that middle place, is the transition in between. And that's where I help with guiding people, because it's a matter of setting new habits and creating a new foundation so they become second nature. Right? Does that make sense? It's all about habit. It's all this is. These are cultural habits, okay? So another thing people say when talking about food, and one of the excuses and myths that we have around food is people who say, you may have heard of this, people have said, I tried being vegetarian, but I really craved meat. I didn't get there yet. I'm gonna do the cheese spiel. It's true, they say I craved meat, I craved cheese, right? But a lot of people say I even tried being vegetarian, but I really craved I really craved meat. And I said, no, you weren't. You weren't craving meat. And they said, no, I was craving meat. And then I had meat and I felt really good. And I said, you weren't craving meat. We are not obligate carnivores. We are not lions on the Serengeti hanging out and a gazelle runs by. We're like, woohoo, woohoo, and we eat them. Woohoo. I don't know what the sound effect was, but you got it. You know what I'm talking about. We're not obligate carnivores, right? We do not act like that. If you want to know what it's like to see an obligate carnivore see prey, just imagine a domestic cat. Have you ever seen a domestic cat see a bird, right? They go, and you're like, nothing. You go, hi, I'm over here. And they go, nothing. I go, nothing over here. And they go, and their eyes are dilated, and their teeth are kind of chirping, and they're making this little funny sound, and their tails will wiggle. And you, is that how you get? When you see a bird? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to wiggle my butt. But is that how you get when you see deer grazing on the side of the road or cattle grazing on the side of the road, right? If you do, please say no right now. That's not how we get. That's not how we react because we're not obligate carnivores. We're not craving the flesh of that animal. We don't even get like that if we see animals who've been hit by a car on the side of the road, right? The first thing we think, and I see in people's faces every time I do this, we feel disgust and we feel compassion. We hope they didn't suffer. We don't take out our forks and start thinking about lunch. That's not what we do. That's not appealing to us. We don't want to see the blood. We don't want to see all that, right? So we don't crave the flesh of other animals, but what we do crave, and by the way, I use this word crave very loosely because I think we use this word crave because it sounds like it's kind of like scientific, like there's some credibility behind something. Because if you just say, I really wanted a burger, then that sounds like, oh, that sounds kind of selfish. But if you say I really craved it, well, there's this scientific reason and this biological reason I needed it, right? So it kind of adds some legitimacy and credibility. So I use the word crave very loosely. But we don't crave the flesh of animals. We crave fat. We crave salt. We crave flavor. We crave familiarity. We crave texture. And all of these things are in plant foods. The problem is that we were taught to meet all of these cravings in meat, dairy, and eggs. We weren't taught that, no, it's the fat, it's the salt, it's that texture, it's something chewy, it's a certain mouthfeel, it's something creamy, whatever it is. That's what it is for us. And this works every time. I could have the most die-hard steak eaters say, I couldn't live without my steak. And I said, it's not the steak, it's the fat and the salt and that texture. And he goes, you're right. And they'll kind of give an example of, you're right, my friend made this meal for me, it was a mushroom and it was really rich and it was really fatty and chewy. And you're right, that was really satisfying. That's what it is for us. So what I recommend is that we identify the craving and then meet the craving with the plant foods, especially when we're transitioning to understand that's what it's about, right? It could be as simple as making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or putting almond butter in a smoothie or having nuts or having nut butter or guacamole or avocado, something richer, something fattier, right? It could be with salt, just some salt. Salt isn't that complicated, right? Something familiar, and your palate does change. You do stop craving as much of the fat and salt when you stop eating as much of the meat, dairy, and eggs. That's true. Your palate absolutely changes. If it's flavor, anybody have spices at home? Anybody have dust collecting on those little spice lids, right? So people go, I got some spice. They go, vegan food. That vegan food can be so bland, they say. They vegan food, and I said, really? Because what do you flavor your hamburgers with? And they go, well, relish and onions and ketchup and mustard and chutneys, right? Barbecue sauce. So I said, oh, so you flavor your meat with plants because that's where the flavor is. It's in the plants. It's in the spices. But then people go, oh, I don't not flavor. It's no flavor. It's all bland. Then I said, do you have any spice? Yes, but it's just decoration on my wall, right? So use the spices. That's where the flavor is. The flavor is in the plant foods. The flavor is not in the animal products. It's in the plant foods, right? We flavor our meat with plant foods. If it's texture, it could be something chewy, it could be something creamy. So you get the idea. It's like meet the craving with the plant food, okay? And then there are people who complain, they say, I could be vegetarian. I've heard it all. Don't even try, because I've heard everything. I could be vegetarian, or I try being vegetarian, and I don't know, and they start whining like that, and they go, but you have to chop a lot of vegetables, don't you? And I think people think that we're just chopping vegetables. Like, we're at a party, and they go, it's getting really late, so we gotta go in and chop some vegetables. vegetables. I'm having a really good time, but I gotta go. Because I gotta chop vegetables. Like, right, it's ridiculous, this thing, because everybody, I'm so busy, I don't have time. Everybody says, I don't have time, I'm so busy, right? I don't have time to chop vegetables, oh my God. And yet we have time to get in a car and drive to a restaurant, look for a parking spot, and wait for a table and sit down, decide what to order, eat the food, wait for the check, and drive back home again. And yet we don't have time to chop some vegetables. We do have time to chop some vegetables. The problem is that we're not using the time we have to chop some vegetables. That's fine. We've made that choice. But it's not like we have to spend hours and hours in the kitchen chopping vegetables, right? But people do. And then they decide I'm going to eat healthfully, and they get vegetables, and they get really excited. Okay, fine, I'll chop some vegetables. And they put the vegetables in the fridge, and they're going to eat well. And then they open the fridge, and they go to make some dinner. And then they go, when the carrots have their tops on, and the cauliflower's still in a bunch, and the broccoli's still in a head, and it's going to take me forever. And then they call the pizza guy, and they have time to wait for the pizza guy, which is amazing. So they do have time, they're just not using the time to chop the vegetables, right? So my recommendation, brilliant, wait for it, chop the vegetables in advance before you put them in the refrigerator, or buy vegetables that are chopped in advance. It's happening all over because apparently we're an anti-chop nation. And so grocery stores are chopping vegetables for us. You don't have to do it yourself. Amazing. And then there's people who say, yeah, but I don't do that because I've heard that you lose the enzymes and the nutrients in the vegetables, so I don't get the vegetables chopped in advance. And I say, well, how many vegetables do you eat now? And they say, not so many. And I said, okay, here's the tip. Vegetables chopped in advance, wait for it, are more nutritious than no vegetables at all. It's amazing. So I know, just brilliance coming from this life. It's just uncanny how much we sabotage ourselves. So we can blame the industries, and we can say we're brainwashed, and we can say all this information and no one's helping us, and our parents, and I'm wet, or we can recognize that we're also making some excuses that are sabotaging us doing the things that we really want to do, right? We could be our own best friends. We could be our best BFF, and we sometimes are our own worst enemy. So I just encourage you all, and all of us, just to recognize, just where we're making these excuses so that we know where we can make the changes. So that's nutrition, that's food. We have also a lot of excuses and blocks around the social aspects, and I really think this is where people have the most challenge. We are social creatures, and that's what we're driven by. We are social creatures. And so I hear a lot of people who say either they're vegan, but they kind of hide it, they're kind of ashamed of it, literally they're in the closet, or they, it's really true, there's this shame, right, around it, and I've seen it happen again and again, or they say I would be vegetarian or I would be vegan, but I don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to call attention to themselves, they don't want to stand out, they don't want to be different, they don't want to look different than everybody else. It means a lot to people, which is interesting because we say we're a culture that values individuality, but I don't think we do. I think we value conformity a lot more. Non-conformity is a dirty word in most people's vocabulary. And yet, everybody says they want to make a difference. Everybody says they want to affect change. They want to live a meaningful life. They want to do something meaningful. And I believe people when they say these things, but I wonder if all of these things mean as much to them as not appearing different, right? Everybody says they want to make a difference, and yet I think we forget that in order to make a difference, we may have to do something different. Right? It's only those people who are willing to kind of step out of the status quo who have an impact. It's easy to go along with the status quo. But the question we have to ask ourselves is at what cost? At the cost of our own health? At the cost of our own values? Those are pretty high costs in my opinion. And then you have people who say, well, I'm vegan at home, but when I'm out with friends or going to restaurants or go to friends' houses, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So I'm only vegan at home. And it sounds so noble. What a martyr. Saint you, aren't you? How noble. I would really do it. I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, right? And I think this is definitely one of the excuses that we use to, again, stop us from doing what we really want to do. Because I don't get this. Anybody who knows me knows who I am, knows where I stand on certain issues, namely that animals are here for themselves and not here for my pleasure. That's not something I have to apologize for. That's not something that changes according to who invites me to dinner or who I think might make uncomfortable. I mean, how selfish it would be for me to kind of determine how to react based on how I think they're going to respond to me, right? Because the truth is, I've never seen people at their most beautiful than when I say, I'm vegan, the most beautiful phrase. and they say, I've been thinking of being vegan. I have so many questions. I hear so many different things. Can you help me? Or I say, I'm vegan, and they say, I would love to have you over for dinner. I'm making more vegan food. I'd love to have you over for dinner. Would you come? And I appreciate that so much. That's their choice. And I always appreciate it. But I think we underestimate people. I think we don't give people the benefit of the doubt. And as long as we think we're protecting them from discomfort, we're also potentially denying them their own transformation. Because how else does that occur but through that honest and open interaction and communication with one another? We don't have time to play games. They don't have time, right? How else does that occur than through that open interaction with one another? And what a mess I would be if my behavior were continually determined by how it would make another person react. In other words, if my being vegan does make someone uncomfortable, that's not mine. That's not mine to do anything with. That doesn't mean that we set out to make someone uncomfortable or that we set out to be rude or ungracious, but it does mean whatever someone does with my values is not mine to worry about, right? That's the bottom line. So the problem is that right now we're keeping the bar so low by not speaking our truth. And that's what happens too. We underestimate families, we underestimate everybody, and we play small too. And the lies we're told become the lies we tell ourselves. One of the things you hear people say all the time is, well, people aren't going to change. It's too hard to change. People aren't going to stop eating animals, people say. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but I have more faith in people than that. I know people change. I see it every single day. And when we raise the bar and give people the information they need to make a change, they do. The problem is the more we keep telling people that it's too hard to change, the more they're going to believe you. The more we keep telling people that there's something radical about eating fruits and vegetables, that's crazy. And nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and grains and herbs and spices. The more we tell people that there's something extreme about not eating the stolen secretions and mutilated bodies of non-human animals, the more we keep telling ourselves these things, the less we'll expect of ourselves and the less we'll expect of others, and nothing will change. But if we raise the bar and keep that bar high, we give people the information they need and the inspiration they need to make the difference I believe that people really want to make. And that's what it comes down to. And people ask me that all the time. Do I really think people can make a difference? And my answer is no. I do not believe that people can make a difference. I know that people do make a difference. Everything we do, everything we buy, everything we eat has an impact on someone or something else. We don't get to decide whether we can make a difference or not. We get to decide only if the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. That's it. Those are our only two choices. There are no neutral actions. And so for me, being vegan is just about living my life with integrity and doing everything I can to not contribute to violence against anyone. And it's about creating joy and meaning in a world so filled with violence. That is to say, whereas violence creates more violence, nonviolence also creates more nonviolence. And I like being on that side of the equation. So all I ask is that we remain open, never say never, embrace the journey, this journey that encourages us to learn new things and try new things and become better people and make more compassionate choices once we know better. Because one thing I know for sure is that the problems we have in this world are not because we have so much compassion we don't know what to do with it. The problems we have in this world are because people are not living according to their own values of compassion and kindness. It's one thing to say we're against cruelty. Most of us are. It's quite another thing to manifest those values in our behavior. And that is my hope for all of us, that we, in our daily choices, manifest our deepest values and realize that we have the power to create the compassionate world we all envision. And may it be so because all of you. Thank you very much. Few minutes. So apparently there's a microphone. Is it set up there? I mean, I could probably just hear you and I'll repeat the question. But we do have a few minutes for questions. Yes?
Really important question. How's Charlie and the baby?
Stop. Don't ask that question. She asked about my cats and I'm going to talk about them for like a half hour now. You are so sweet. Stop it, I'll show you pictures when we're done. My babies are so good, I miss them so much. Charlie and Michiko, my baby. Thank you, that's very cute. Stop it, I can't stand it. She's the most important question, she said. The most important question. Any other questions? This time, you may ask the most important question of the day. Yes.
I'm wondering, I mean, I haven't eaten meat in 20 years, so, you know, I've had the conversation so many times, but I feel sometimes like if someone asks you about it, they're so confrontational. And I'm not afraid of confrontation, but you're not always in a situation where you can sort of get into it with somebody, like at work. I mean, how do you approach something like that where someone's just like,
Sure.
like that?
These are the questions I get all the time. So the question is...
Repeat the question, please.
I'm gonna do it. So the question is, you know, she hasn't had animals in 20 years, but people, when they ask the question, why are you vegetarian? Because it's the inevitable question people ask, why are you vegan, whatever. She feels that they're sometimes confrontational, kind of hostile and defensive. And so how do you do it? Because you're not always in a situation when you can answer the question, so how do you deal with it? I do talk about this a lot in my podcast, and I do recommend people check out the podcast. It's free. It's just an online radio show. That's all it is, okay? Food for thought. But what I really believe very strongly in, first of all, they're asking the question. And I know that even though they're defensive, they're interested. I do believe that. They would ask the question if they weren't. And so even though they might be, yeah, why are you vegan? I love steak. Why are you vegan? They're still asking the question. And so what I really recommend is that when we're answering these questions that might feel confrontational or challenging, that we get underneath what that question really is and answer that question. So when someone says, what about plants? Plants feel too. Don't you care about the plants, right? They're not staying up all night worrying about broccoli. Like, that's not the problem that they're worried about. What they're saying is, how crazy is this? How far do you take this? Where's the line? Could I do this? What is this about, right? Where do you draw the line? They're asking that question, and we can answer that question because it's underneath that. So when someone says, why are you vegan, it might feel hostile. Speak to your truth about why you are. Now, I know there are different people and different reasons, and we all do it for different reasons, and that's great. But answer that question personally. Don't try and spout statistics and give them all the information and feel like this is the one chance you have to give them every bit of information they need or you fail. Answer why. And for me, it's very simple. I don't want to contribute to violence against anyone. I don't want to hurt anyone. And when I realized I stopped. Nobody can argue with that. And it brings it down to a place of, this is my personal opinion. I never use the word you when I talk to people. I don't use the second person because it's because I'm then it becomes this. Then it becomes an argument. And for me, when I'm answering these questions, and I'm kind of giving you general answers so that these are just general guidelines, when I'm answering these questions, I just completely forgot what I was going to say. It was so brilliant, and now I can't remember. What was I going to say? I was going to say, that's it. I don't know what I was going to say. So just speak from your heart, and I really do believe that's what people will respond to. I really do, and I've seen it again and again. Yeah. Check out the podcast. We talk about this.
Yeah, I've seen that few.
Okay. Yes.
I think the simplest answer is respect for myself, respect for animals, and respect for the earth. Done.
That's your answer, and that's a beautiful thing. And if that's your answer, fantastic. There's not one answer for everybody. And I encourage people to really think about what their response is, what they really want to say that really speaks to what's most truthful for them. Because what's most truthful for me is that answer. I'm not going to try and answer in a way to see if it would touch what I think they're interested in. Then I'm just playing a game there. I remember what I was going to say. What I was going to say, this is brilliant, hang on, don't leave, is I think what happens is we get into these conversations with people and we want to be right rather than effective. And for me, it's about being effective and having a dialogue rather than winning the argument. And I think if that's what we can focus on also, and not feel the pressure that we have to have all the information in that conversation, tell them about a website you might want them to go to, so that they can leave with some food for thought, and tell them if they're ever interested, you'd love to have more of a conversation with them. If they do get hostile, say, you know what, you're clearly not interested, we'll talk about this another time. Be playful and use humor too, I think makes a huge difference. I will be at the table over there answering questions and signing books, and thank all of you so much for coming today. Good luck.